Oliver, what are you waiting for? Screamed Clara. Push her now before someone sees us. But no matter how much she pleaded, no ounce of mercy showed in their eyes. Oliver and his mistress had already made their decision. They were going to push her off the cliff. 6 years later, she came back, to collect, to fight, and to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Natalie, Oliver whispered in fear. He couldn't believe his eyes. It was her, Natalie. She was alive. Natalie, wait. No, it can't be. She's dead. Natalie Kingsley had lost everything. Her parents died in a tragic car accident. That night, Natalie was with them in the vehicle. She was the only one who survived. Her mother had pushed her out moments before the car plunged off the cliff. Tragically, her parents perished. The accident left Natalie paralyzed from the waist down. She could no longer walk. Since then, she had lived in a wheelchair. No matter how much wealth her parents left behind, she couldn't shake the feeling of worthlessness. She believed she had become nothing but a burden, especially to her husband, Oliver Kingsley. Natalie often found herself asking the heavens what she had done to deserve such suffering. Not only did she lose her parents, but her younger sister Alison as well. Alison had a heart condition, and upon hearing the devastating news of their parents' deaths, she couldn't handle it. She passed away in the same year. It felt as if the world had turned its back on her. Everyone she loved, gone. And the most heartbreaking part, the man she thought would stand by her side, the one who vowed to love her for life, betrayed her. Not only did Oliver cheat on her, but he also wanted to take everything from her. He wanted her gone. Oliver, please don't do this to me, Natalie begged, her voice weak. The sky was dark, the only light coming from a faint and distant moon. Cold wind howled from the edge of the cliff, carrying a sinister promise. A black car sat at the end of the narrow road, its interior light revealing a restless woman leaning against the door. Clara, Oliver's mistress. At the cliff's edge sat a wheelchair, and in it, Natalie, trembling in fear, clutching the armrests. Standing behind her was Oliver, her husband. But tonight he wasn't the man she married. Gone was the compassion in his eyes, replaced by cruelty and the intent to end her life. Oliver, please. Natalie's voice broke as she pleaded. I don't want to die, not yet. Please. Oliver laughed, bitter and deep. Too late, Natalie. You need to disappear so I can have everything I want. Besides, you're useless to me. You've been nothing but dead weight. It's better if you're out of my life so Clara and I can finally be together. But I'm your wife, Natalie cried. I loved you. I gave you everything, my whole life. Oh, shut up, Natalie. Enough with your melodrama. Clara snapped from the car. Her voice rang out, clear even from a distance. We don't need your life. We just need your fortune. And to get it, you need to die. Once you're gone, everything will be ours. I'll finally get all the designer bags I've ever wanted. I'll be the queen of the Kingsley estate. You're shameless, Clara, Natalie shouted, her voice shaking. I trusted you. I treated you like my best friend, like a sister. Clara laughed. That was your mistake, Natalie. You trusted too easily. People are only nice when they want something. Didn't that ever cross your mind? Tears fell down Natalie's cheeks. So it's my fault for trusting people like you? Yes, Clara said coldly. But it doesn't matter anymore. You'll be dead soon, just like your parents. Natalie felt like she'd been stabbed, her chest filled with rage. Wait, what did you say? Yes, Clara sneered. We caused the accident. Oliver and I. Natalie's world spun. Rage exploded in her chest. For over 2 years, she had lived beside the very people responsible for her parents' death. Yes, we planned all of this, Clara admitted proudly. We wanted you out of the way. We wanted to take everything from the Kingsley fortune. We didn't expect you to survive that night. But it still worked in our favor. Your parents and sister are gone. You're alone, no one left to protect you. Natalie's tears poured. You're monsters. How could you do this? How do you live with yourselves? We don't have consciences, Clara scoffed. Especially not for people like you. Your whole life, you were spoiled. Your parents gave you everything. Isn't it about time someone else got to experience that? Natalie screamed. It's not my fault I had good parents. It's not my fault they weren't like yours. Clara barked. We're not talking about that tonight. This is your final night on Earth. Make the most of it. Why don't you start by saying goodbye to your husband? Tell him you love him, because after tonight, he'll be mine. Natalie turned to Oliver. Please, Oliver, don't do this. I'll give you everything you want. The company, the estate. Just don't kill me. She pleaded with him, her breath short, her body trembling. Oliver, please, if there's any humanity left in you, have mercy. Oliver, Clara shouted. Push her, now before someone sees. Oliver's grip on the wheelchair handles tightened. Please, Natalie whispered. He closed his eyes, conflicted for a second. But Clara screamed again. Do it! Isn't this what we planned all along? If she lives, we'll never be free. We'll never have the Kingsley fortune. Oliver looked to the sky, exhaled, and whispered coldly. Forgive me, Natalie. I did love you. Once. But your story ends here. He pushed the wheelchair. Natalie screamed as she rolled uncontrollably toward the cliff. Then, silence. She hit the rocks below, her body plunging into the dark, endless sea. Oliver turned toward the car. Clara jumped inside with a grin. He wiped the sweat from his brow, entered the driver's seat, and she giggled beside him. You did a great job, Oliver, she said. The car sped off into the night, but far away on a quiet evening near a small harbor town, under a full and gentle moon, a small fishing boat cut through the calm waves. On board were an old fisherman, Mr. Theo, and his grandson, Hank. The boat moved slowly through the gentle sea. Theo and his grandson Hank were seated in calm silence as the engine hummed and tiny waves lapped against the sides. The chirping of crickets along the distant shore added to the peaceful night. Hank, Mr. Theo called while gazing at the moon. You ready for the festival tomorrow? Sure, the boy chuckled. There'll be plenty of girls who want to dance with you, Tegan. Hank, barely a teenager, laughed, while Theo shook his head in amusement. Come on now, Theo teased. I bet every girl on the island will be fighting for your attention. Tegan only smiled. I'm not really planning to go to town tomorrow, he said. I think I'll just fish instead. Crowds aren't really my thing. Hank snorted. Just say it, bro. You don't want to cause another girl fight. It's not that, Tegan replied, managing a chuckle. I just don't feel like going. Man, the girls will be dressing up just to get noticed by you, Theo added. Even Laurie and Rosa's daughter bought new lipstick just for the dance, Hank chimed in. Tegan shook his head again. He didn't understand the attention. Yes, he had the looks, but he wasn't wealthy. His life was simple, fishing for a living. To him, women should care about more than looks. They should consider what a man could actually provide. Plenty of girls are going home heartbroken tomorrow, Hank joked. They all laughed, surrounded by nothing but water and moonlight. After their laughter died down, Tegan suddenly noticed how full their nets were, bulging with large, fresh fish. Looks like we're going to clean up at the market, he said, rearranging the net. This is rare, Theo added. Must be the full moon bringing in the blessing. I hope we always catch this much, Hank said. People will fight over this tomorrow. Satisfied with their catch, they headed back to shore. The only sounds were the insects and the soft rustle of leaves. Tegan, Hank and I are heading home first, all right? Theo said. We've got an early start. Sure, Mr. Theo, Tegan replied. Take care. What about you, bro? Hank asked. Aren't you coming? I'll stay and fix the net first. You two go ahead. Sure you don't need help? I've got it. Hank and Theo left, leaving Tegan alone on the quiet shore. Behind him, the ocean. Ahead, his small home nestled on the island's edge. He walked back to the net with a cigarette in hand, soaking in the silence. He preferred it this way, far from noise, far from chaos. This was the kind of peace Tegan valued more than all the money in the world. As he walked home along the rocky shore, the cool breeze easing his tired body, a strange shape caught his eye, a lump on the rocks up ahead. He stopped. His heart skipped. It looked like a person. He shook his head, dismissing the thought, but as he stepped closer, the image grew clearer. A woman, lying motionless, drenched. Tegan rushed toward her, his pulse pounding. She was soaked from head to toe, her hair matted and clinging to her skin. He knelt beside her and shone his flashlight at her face. There was a wound on her forehead. He touched her wrist, faint, but there was a pulse. She was alive. He didn't waste another second. Tegan began chest compressions. Don't give up on me, he whispered as he pushed on her chest. After a few rounds, he checked her pulse again. Still weak. He tilted her chin, opened her mouth, and gave her mouth to mouth. More compressions, again and again. Eventually, the rhythm under his fingers grew stronger. Her pulse was improving. Relief hit him, but he knew she wasn't safe yet. Carefully, he lifted her in his arms and carried her to his old Jeep parked in front of his house. He laid her on the back seat and drove as fast as he could, the engine howling through the silent night. The winding road seemed endless, but finally he reached the nearest hospital. He jumped out, flung the door open, and shouted, "Help! I need help! I have a critical patient! She drowned! She needs help!" Nurses and doctors rushed out. They pulled her onto a stretcher and wheeled her inside. Tegan followed, but a nurse stopped him at the door. "We'll take it from here, sir. Thank you." He stood there, watching her disappear down the emergency room hallway, heart pounding, full of hope. He didn't leave. He sat in the cold hallway outside the ER, eyes glued to the door that kept opening and closing. He couldn't explain it, but something told him not to walk away. Though she was a stranger, something bound him to her, like fate had chosen him to find her. Hours passed. The hospital lights never dimmed. A doctor emerged. "Are you the one who brought the patient in?" Tegan stood. "Yes. How is she?" "She lost a lot of blood from that head wound. It's good you found her in time. But..." The doctor hesitated. "She needs blood. She's a B negative." Tegan frowned. "A B negative?" "Yes, it's rare. We need a donor immediately or she may not make it." Without hesitation, Tegan replied, "I'm a B negative. I'll donate." "All right, we'll test and process right away." Tegan went through the screening and began the donation. As his blood filled the bag, he kept thinking about the woman. Who was she? What happened to her? Every drop he gave felt like it was stitching his life to hers. Hours later, the doctor returned, serious expression in place. "She's still in critical condition. She's on life support. There's a pulse, she's breathing, but it's weak." Tegan sighed, trying to stay hopeful. "There's one more thing," the doctor added. "She's pregnant." Tegan's eyes widened. "We don't know yet if the baby will survive," the doctor continued. "It depends on how strong she is, but we'll do everything we can." The doctor left. Tegan sat quietly, staring at the floor. He didn't know who she was, no name, no identity, but he couldn't walk away. He wanted to help her, to protect her. He wasn't the same man he used to be. He'd walked away from that life long ago. So he simply sat back down, letting the doctors do their job. He couldn't get involved, not yet. 1 week passed. The woman he'd rescued, still unnamed, still silent, finally opened her eyes. Now conscious, the woman sat upright in her hospital bed. Tegan sat beside her, studying the soft, unfamiliar face of the stranger he'd rescued. She still hadn't spoken a word. "How is she doing?" Tegan asked the doctor as she passed by. "She's more stable now, eating, sleeping well," the doctor replied, glancing at the woman. "But she still can't speak. It might be trauma-related. She understands us, she responds, but there's still no voice." Tegan looked at the woman. She sat silently, staring out the window, as though searching for something far away. Her eyes were distant, vacant. She was quiet, still, but beneath the silence, something was clearly aching. That evening, Tegan sat in the hospital's waiting area when Mr. Theo arrived with Hank. "Tegan," Theo began, concern in his voice, "you still haven't reported the woman to the authorities?" Tegan sighed. "Not yet, sir. I'm waiting for her to say something, or at least give a sign. I don't want to assume anything that could put her in danger." "But what if she's involved in something serious? What if someone's looking for her?" Theo warned. Hank added, "He's right, bro. You might get pulled into something dangerous." Tegan was quiet. He took a cigarette from his jacket pocket, but didn't light it. Instead, he just played with it between his fingers. "I have a feeling, sir," Tegan said slowly. "I don't think it was just an accident. She didn't just wash up there. She was running, or hiding. That's why I haven't told anyone yet. If I alert the authorities without her permission, I could end up hurting her more." Theo and Hank exchanged glances. Theo spoke again, firmer this time. "But you should let the police handle this. You don't know what kind of trouble might come from this. It's dangerous, son." Hank nodded. "Exactly. You were just trying to help her. But what if it backfires on you?" Tegan shook his head. "I found her. Fate brought her to my shore. Whatever her reasons, I'll face it." The old man and his grandson fell silent. They could tell Tegan had made up his mind. This responsibility, he had taken it on willingly. Even without knowing the full story, he was determined to stand by her. Days passed. Her condition remained the same. Silent, withdrawn. But that didn't stop Tegan from visiting her every day. He couldn't explain it, but something kept pulling him to her. A quiet need to make sure she had someone in her corner, even if she never asked for it. That night, after returning from fishing, Tegan arrived at the hospital carrying a bag of hot soup and some fruit. His skin was pale from the cold seawater, his body tired, but instead of going home, he went straight to the hospital. Inside, the woman lay in bed, still quiet. She stared at the ceiling, one hand gently resting over her belly. He wasn't sure if she already knew she was pregnant or if the doctors had only recently told her, but he was told the medical staff had informed her. "Glad you're awake," Tegan said softly, placing the bag on the small table. "I brought you soup, still warm. I know the hospital food isn't great." She didn't respond. He stepped closer with a spoonful of soup. "Come on, eat. You need strength." She didn't move, just stared at him, unsure, hesitant, but there was no anger in her eyes. Only fear. "If it's hard for you, I can feed you." He slowly lifted the spoon to her lips. She hesitated a little longer, then finally opened her mouth and took it. He watched her carefully to make sure she didn't choke or burn her tongue. Once she finished half the bowl, he paused and handed her some water. "Drink up," he said, holding the glass to her lips. "You'll need it for your meds later." She drank a little. He cleaned up the table. The room was still. Only the soft hum of the fan and the distant footsteps of nurses filled the silence. Until suddenly, Tegan froze. He turned sharply, startled, nearly dropping the glass in his hand. But it wasn't the noise that shocked him. It was her voice. "Thank you." The woman had spoken, quiet, whispered, but clear. Their eyes met. Tegan smiled, still stunned. "You're welcome," he replied. She knew his name because he'd introduced himself when she first regained consciousness, but he still didn't know hers. He stepped closer. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Natalie," she started, hesitating, something in her eyes flickering like memory. "Natalie Kingsley." Days passed, and Natalie's medical expenses continued to grow. There were new prescriptions, new treatments. The costs piled up. Tegan quietly bought what she needed with what little savings he had. Inside the hospital room, Natalie was slowly regaining her strength. Tegan placed the latest medications, pills, syrups, a few injections, onto the table. She watched him. Silence filled the room until Natalie spoke again, her voice soft but steady. "Sorry, Tegan, I think I've burdened you too much." He looked at her and smiled lightly. "It's all right. My medicines are too expensive." "It's fine, I had savings." A pause. Then Natalie whispered, "When I get my old life back, I'll pay you back." Every cent Tegan stopped. He lowered the bottle in his hand, turned to her, and looked her in the eye. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "What was your old life? What really happened to you? Why did you wash up on my shore like that?" Natalie fell quiet. Her fingers trembled as they toyed with the edge of the blanket. She wasn't ready, and he understood that. He wasn't going to push her. Her reaction said enough. Whatever it wasn't easy to tell. "If you're not ready, that's okay. I won't force you," Tegan said softly. But after a moment, Natalie exhaled, slow and shaky. "I want my husband dead." She whispered it like a curse, heavy, broken. Tegan froze. "What did you say?" he asked quietly. Natalie looked up at him, eyes brimming with tears. "Oliver, my husband, and his mistress. They tried to kill me. For my money. They wanted me gone." Tegan was speechless. Her own husband had tried to kill her. For fortune. And if he hadn't found her, they would have succeeded. Though Natalie didn't know Tegan well yet, she felt safe enough to speak. And one by one, she told him everything. The betrayal, the cliff, the pleas, and the cruel confessions of what they had done, not just to her, but to her parents. Tegan saw the pain in her eyes, the fear, the desperation. He remained quiet. He didn't know whether to feel shocked, furious, or simply devastated for her. But one thing was certain, he wasn't going to let anyone hurt her again. After the heavy conversation in the hospital, silence returned to the room. Tegan didn't ask further. He simply told Natalie to rest, to gather her strength. That night, he didn't return home. His concern for her had deepened. He feared her husband might find her and succeed in finishing what they started. His desire to protect Natalie was stronger than ever. Whether it was out of pity or something deeper, he wasn't sure. Maybe because he too had once been betrayed by those he loved. "If you have nowhere to go once you're discharged, you can stay at my place," Tegan said seriously. Natalie, who had just been quietly gazing out the window, looked at him, surprised and hesitant. What? Are you serious?" Tegan nodded. "Yeah, I live alone. You'd be safe there while you figure out your next steps. And honestly, I think it's safer for you at my place." "But I've troubled you enough already," Natalie said weakly. Tegan shook his head. "It's fine. I couldn't possibly turn my back on you, especially now that I know what your husband and his mistress did. And especially since you're carrying a child. If anything happens to you or that baby, I couldn't live with myself." And for the first time since regaining consciousness, Natalie smiled. "Thank you, Tegan." And in her voice was deep gratitude. A few days later, the day of Natalie's hospital release arrived. She wore a simple house dress and a light cardigan, provided by one of the nurses. When Tegan arrived at the hospital, he welcomed her warmly and helped her into the wheelchair he had bought, using his savings. Natalie still couldn't walk, not since the accident when her parents were murdered by her husband and his mistress. The sky was bright, but the air was cool, a sign of a new beginning. As they rode in the car, Natalie's eyes reflected both excitement and nervousness. She was finally leaving the sterile, suffocating walls of the hospital, but she also felt a quiet dread of the unknown. Their trip to Tegan's home was silent. When they arrived, he gently helped her down from the jeep and settled her into the wheelchair before guiding her into the house. "Sorry if it's a bit old," Tegan said. "It's not like the hospital, but I promise you, you're safe here." "It's perfect," Natalie replied. "Thank you. If it weren't for your kindness, I wouldn't have anywhere else to go right now." Though her voice was sincere, she still carried a quiet heaviness. Once inside, Tegan fixed her a drink and set up the room she would stay in. "If you need anything, just let me know," he said. Natalie looked at him, eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you so much, Tegan. I'll try to help around the house while I'm here." Tegan smiled. "You don't have to repay me, but if it makes you feel better, I won't stop you." Between the hush of the nearby shore and the dimming glow of dusk, a new chapter was quietly taking shape. They had no idea what lay ahead, but for Natalie, for the first time in a long while, she had something to hold on to. One morning, the waves lapped gently against the boat as Tegan, Theo, and Hank set off to fish. The sun was just beginning to rise over the mountains, and the salty breeze filled the air. The three sat in silence, gazing out over the water. Hank tended to the net, while Theo puffed on his cigar. They watched Tegan, who was focused on the engine, lost in thought. Moments later, Theo spoke up with concern in his voice. "Tegan, you're shouldering too much responsibility for someone you don't even know." Tegan didn't respond right away. He kept working, then after a pause, he said calmly, "I can't just abandon her, Mr. Theo. She has no one else, no family. She's pregnant. I can't ignore that. I wouldn't be able to live with myself." Theo watched the young man closely. "Kid," he said with a sigh, "you're too kind." Hank butted in with a chuckle. "That's just how he is, Grandpa. That's why everyone likes him." Theo smiled and nodded. "That's true, Hank. If more people had hearts like Tegan's, the world would be a quieter place." Tegan smiled faintly and turned his eyes toward the rising sun. Weeks passed since Natalie moved into Tegan's home. With each day, she grew stronger. Her smile returned, slowly. She was beginning to recover. Tegan's home was quiet, clean, and, most importantly, safe. Every day he looked after her, and as time went on, Natalie's trust in him deepened. Mr. Theo's wife often visited, bringing food and stories that always ended with warm smiles. Natalie became close to them, slowly becoming part of the small island community that Tegan called home. One night, the sound of waves crashing against rocks echoed in the distance. The wind was cool, and the stars looked down on the quiet world below. Outside the house, Tegan sat on a bench, a cigarette in hand, staring at the ocean. Natalie sat beside him in her wheelchair, wrapped in a simple house robe. They sat silently for a long time until Tegan finally broke the silence. "Do you have a plan?" he asked. "What do you want to do with your husband and his mistress? Are you planning to have them arrested?" Natalie looked at him. A long silence followed. She let out a deep breath. "It'll be difficult if I go after them legally," she said. "They're rich now, powerful. They have control of Kingsley Enterprises, the company my parents built, and I'm sure they've already manipulated the people my parents trusted. But one thing's certain, I want justice. I want revenge." Anger returned to her eyes. "I want to take back everything they stole from me. Not just the money or the house. I want my dignity back, the trust they destroyed, the life they tried to erase. I will get it all back." Tegan nodded. He understood, and he couldn't blame her. If he were in her place, he'd want the same. To see those who caused pain pay for it, to reclaim what was his. "I'll help you," he said firmly. "Whatever your plan is, I'm with you." A violent storm swept across the island. Waves turned into monsters, crashing onto the shore and destroying anchored boats. The wind raged like a beast, tearing through homes, and the rain poured down as if the sky would never dry. In the aftermath, the island looked like a battlefield. Homes ruined, livelihoods shattered. Boats, the villagers' main source of income, destroyed. Among them was Tegan's. When Natalie saw his broken boat, her heart clenched with guilt and sadness. She knew how important that vessel was. It was how Tegan earned their daily bread. Still, Tegan kept it to himself. When she asked about it, he smiled and simply said, "It's nothing. Don't worry." But Natalie could see it in his eyes, the weight he was hiding. He didn't say much after that, instead spending most of his time helping others who were affected by the storm. Days later, early in the morning, Natalie heard the sound of a vehicle pulling up outside. It wasn't just any vehicle. It was elegant, expensive, unusual for the island. She peeked through the window and saw 6 men in black uniforms stepping out. They moved with disciplined precision, carrying leather cases, standing tall with commanding presence. Fear struck her. She immediately called for Tegan, who was out back. As he stepped outside and saw them, Tegan froze. All 6 men bowed in unison. "Young master." Their voices echoed. Natalie was confused by what she heard. Young master? Tegan's entire demeanor changed. His posture stiffened, his face cold, like someone entirely different. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice chilly. One of the men stepped forward. "Your father sent us, young master. He needs you. Your family needs you. You must return to Rome. He wants you to stop hiding and come back." Natalie watched as Tegan's brows furrowed. Another man added, "Things are changing quickly. Too quickly. Your absence is no longer something the family can afford. The house is on the verge of crumbling from within. Your name is being questioned. Your loyalty, too." "I'm not going back," Tegan said coldly. But then another man spoke, voice almost pleading. "Your father is sick, gravely sick. My lady is already old, and your brother, he's getting married, but he refuses to take over Rockwell Enterprises. He says it was never meant for him." "That responsibility was always meant for you," the man continued. "You're the only one he truly trusts. You're our only hope now, young master." Tegan didn't respond, but Natalie noticed the change in his face, the disappointment, the shock, the sadness. Tegan stared off in silence, his expression unreadable. Slowly, he took a deep breath, as if trying to convince himself of what he needed to do. Inside the house, Natalie sat behind the curtain, watching everything unfold. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Tegan, the man she thought was just a simple fisherman, was a Rockwell, a man with a deep and hidden past. That night, the wind was still, the moon high. Natalie and Tegan sat beneath a tree in their usual quiet spot. It had been days since the men in black had arrived. No one had brought it up again, not until now. Tegan finally spoke. "Natalie," he said softly. She turned to him. "I need to bring you with me, to Rome." Her eyes widened. "Rome?" She swallowed hard, caught off guard. Tegan exhaled and sat on the sand beside her. "There are things I haven't told you," he began. "Before I came here I was a doctor, a surgeon. I was engaged. We were supposed to get married. Everything was going fine, until I found out she was pregnant by my younger brother." Natalie was stunned. Her breath caught in her chest. "In the Rockwell family," Tegan continued, his voice cold, "there's a rule. No child will be cast aside, and no scandal should tarnish the family's name. So my parents told me to understand, to forgive. He clenched his jaw. They wanted me to act like my pain didn't matter, like the betrayal I felt wasn't real. So I left. I left Rome, left the company, left everything. And I came here, to this quiet life, far from the noise. Natalie didn't speak. She tried to absorb the weight of his words. But now, I have to go back, he said. My father is sick. My brother won't take over. My mother's too old. I'm their last hope. He looked at her and gently took her hand. And I want you to come with me. Natalie was shocked. Why? Because I want to make sure you're safe. I can help you more there, with your plan. We have more resources, and... He paused. I don't want to leave you here, not in your condition. I can't handle the thought of you being alone. Natalie didn't answer. Her heart was pounding, but deep inside she could feel his sincerity and the growing burden he was about to face. Eventually, she made her choice. She would go with him. She had no other family, and Tegan didn't want to leave her behind, especially not while she was vulnerable. Besides, even though there was fear, she trusted him, trusted that he could protect her. When they arrived in Rome, Natalie was overwhelmed. The city was sophisticated, elegant, rich with history. But when they pulled up in front of the Rockwell estate, she was left speechless. The mansion was massive, grand, imposing. "Is this your house?" Natalie asked, almost in disbelief. Tegan nodded. "Welcome to the Rockwell estate." The car door opened. Tegan helped her out and pushed her wheelchair toward the entrance. Inside the grand receiving hall, two figures stood waiting. An older man and woman, poised with dignity and power. She assumed they were Tegan's parents. Beside them stood a man about Tegan's age and a beautiful woman. Formal posture, tension in their eyes. And at their side was a little boy, 5 or 6 years old, the spitting image of Tegan's brother. Instead of a cold reception, the older woman smiled when she saw Tegan. She stepped forward and embraced him tightly. "I'm glad you're back, my son." She held on, afraid he might vanish again. His father, on the other hand, remained stern, his voice controlled but softer than expected. "Took you long enough to return, but I'm glad you finally did." Tegan didn't reply. He kept quiet, his emotions tightly guarded. Natalie, meanwhile, felt the tension of the entire family pressing down on her. Then the brother finally spoke. "And who is she?" Tegan looked each of them in the eye before answering. "She's Natalie. She'll be staying with me." Then firmly, "If you want me back in this house, if you want me to run the company." He paused. "Then treat her with respect, and we'll be okay." Silence filled the room. No one dared speak. Natalie remained still, nervous, but deep within that tense silence, she felt something she hadn't in years. She felt safe. In the months that followed, everything began to settle. Because of Natalie's background in business, the degree she had completed before her life was torn apart, she was able to assist with some of the day-to-day operations of Rockwell Enterprises. After her parents passed, she had managed their company until it was taken from her. Now, with Tegan guiding her and involving her in real transactions, she slowly became part of the company's inner circle. Tegan's parents were overjoyed, not only because of Natalie's intelligence and work ethic, but also because she became Tegan's reliable partner. And clearly, Tegan had changed, calmer, happier. It didn't even seem to affect him much that he regularly saw his ex-fiancée and his brother. Since Tegan's return, Rockwell Enterprises soared higher. The operations modernized, the market expanded. The company's reputation strengthened both locally and internationally. And behind all that success stood Natalie, quietly but effectively supporting everything. Several months later, Natalie gave birth to a healthy and beautiful baby girl. She named her Isla, in honor of the place where a new chapter of her life began. After giving birth, and with support from Tegan and his family, Natalie underwent physical therapy to regain her ability to walk. Over the years, she gradually began to walk again. As she physically healed, she also began to rebuild her identity. With Tegan's encouragement, she created a new name for herself, stronger, braver. Now Isla was 5 years old, cheerful, healthy, with sparkling eyes. Tegan adored her. He had become the father figure she knew and loved. Even though Natalie had told Isla that Tegan wasn't her biological father, Isla refused to believe it. "No, Mommy," Isla said one day, hugging Tegan. "Even if he's not my real dad, he'll always be my daddy." Tegan smiled gently. "Of course, yes, baby." "Yay, you'll always be my daddy," she cheered, kissing his cheek. Natalie and Isla had long moved into their own house, but Tegan and his parents often visited. Sometimes they even stayed overnight, wanting more time with Isla. Tegan's parents knew the truth, that Isla was the daughter of Natalie's former husband, but it didn't matter to them. To them, Isla was their granddaughter. Natalie was happy with how life had turned out for her and her daughter. She felt the love they received, but even amid the peace and warmth, there was still something unresolved in her heart. The pain, the anger, the thirst for justice, and now she could finally stand on her own feet. She was ready. She was ready to return to the US, ready to reclaim everything that had been taken from her, ready for revenge. One night, while standing on the balcony, gazing out over the city lights, Natalie turned to Tegan. "Tegan," she said softly. Her voice was calm but resolute. "I'm going back to the United States." Tegan looked at her. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Yes, it's time. I can't stay silent while they live freely, while I've been through hell." Tegan fell silent for a moment. Then, "Do you want me to come with you?" She shook her head. "I know you're busy now. The company needs you. I don't want you to give up your responsibilities. You don't have to go with us." Tegan nodded slowly. "Just call me if you need anything," he said, his tone serious. "You know I'll never abandon you." Natalie smiled, but behind that smile was the fire of a woman ready to confront her past. She and Isla returned to the US. Before they left, Tegan made them promise to stay safe, and reminded Natalie that if anything ever went wrong, she knew exactly who to call, the man who had saved her, who helped her stand again. As their private jet landed, Isla clung tightly to her mother's hand while they descended the steps. The little girl looked around, wide-eyed. "Mom, this place is so beautiful," Isla said cheerfully. "Tegan would love this view so much." Natalie only smiled faintly. To her there was no beauty in this place. It was filled with memories of deceit, pain, and betrayal, wounds that, even after all these years, hadn't fully healed. "I miss Daddy Tegan," Isla added, still holding her mother's hand. Natalie stroked Isla's hair gently and said softly, "Once I've finished what I need to do, we'll go back to Rome, I promise." Isla smiled, content with that promise, but Natalie's gaze stayed sharp as she looked around her surroundings, every corner reminding her of the people who had broken her life apart, of their smiling, lying faces, of the moment her world had collapsed. After arriving at their penthouse in one of the city's tallest buildings, Natalie summoned her team. The men who appeared stood firm, alert, with cold expressions, trained and disciplined. "Protect my daughter," Natalie ordered. "No one gets near her. If anyone tries, make sure they never try again." "Yes, ma'am," they responded in unison. That evening, while the city slept under a cloudy sky and a pale moon, Natalie stood before the large mirror in her suite, She picked up the phone and called one of her trusted agents. "Start the plan," she said, her voice cold. "Yes, ma'am," came the reply. The next day, news broke. A major shipping vessel, owned by Oliver and Clara under the Kingsley family enterprise, had sunk off the coast. Massive loss. Cargo, capital, and credibility gone. Natalie didn't flinch. She read the reports with steady eyes and whispered, "I never needed the money stolen by traitors." Her next command was even more ruthless. "Burn everything Clara owns. Everything she built using money she stole from the Kingsleys. I want it all gone. I don't want even a single trace of her wealth left." Her voice was firm, without hesitation. This was just the beginning. She would take everything back: name, dignity, and justice. She'd waited long enough. They would feel the hell she'd lived through, tenfold. On a moonless night, the only light came from roaring flames engulfing one of Clara's properties. Natalie stood a distance away, wearing a black trench coat. She watched as the once luxurious building was consumed by fire. Every wall, every item, every inch turning to ash. A smile crossed her face, not of joy, but of triumph. This was the moment she had longed for, the satisfaction she had craved for years. The rage inside her, now blazing just like the fire before her. And yet, it still wasn't enough. She wanted more. She wanted it all. From a distance, Clara was in chaos, shouting into her phone, panicked, crying, begging her people to salvage anything they could. But the flames only grew stronger. Hope faded. Natalie stepped a little closer. She heard Clara's voice through the noise and smoke. "Water! Bring the extinguishers! Where are the fire trucks? What's taking them so long?" Natalie stopped walking and watched. She wanted Clara to see her, to know. Suddenly, one of Natalie's men approached. "Ma'am, what else do you want us to do?" She turned to him, eyes glowing with cold fire. "Make sure nothing is left of Clara Morales's assets." She turned back to the burning building and smiled. "Keep the fire department out. If any innocents are affected, I'll handle the aid. But that woman, she'll never get my sympathy." "Yes, ma'am." As the man started to leave, she added, "Make sure all documents linking us to this are destroyed. I don't want any trace left behind." He nodded and left. Natalie remained where she was, listening to the screams, the calls for help, the shattering glass. The heat didn't faze her. If anything, it gave her strength. Suddenly, Clara turned and looked toward Natalie's direction. Her eyes widened. She froze, like she had seen a ghost from her past. Fear transformed her expression, from shock to horror to disbelief. "Natalie?" Clara whispered, almost inaudibly. Natalie said nothing. She just smiled, deliberately showing herself, making sure Clara saw her, believed what she saw. Then, just as Clara tried to get closer, a crowd of panicked workers ran between them. By the time Clara looked again, Natalie was gone. Frantically, Clara ran to where she had seen her, as if chasing the shadow of her sins. "Natalie! Natalie! Is that you?" she screamed. Her voice shook with fear and tension. But there was no answer. She never saw Natalie again that night. Clara collapsed to her knees, grabbing fistfuls of her hair, nearly going mad. From a safe distance, Natalie watched. She smiled, then turned and left, triumphant. Inside the grand Kingsley residence, Clara paced restlessly across the living room, a mix of fear and rage twisting her face. Her hair was a mess, her hands shaking, emotions on the edge of exploding. Oliver sat silently on the couch, a glass of whiskey in his hand, watching his wife unravel. "Oliver, I saw her!" Clara yelled, walking toward him in a panic. "I saw Natalie." "I can't be wrong. That was Natalie. She was the one behind the fire. I know it." Oliver shook his head. "Clara, calm down. Natalie's dead." "No, she's not," Clara snapped. "She's alive. She was standing there watching as my building burned. She smiled at me. Oliver, she smiled." Oliver stood up, frowning. "You're being paranoid again. Years have passed. No body, no evidence. How can you say she's alive?" "Exactly," Clara shouted. "There was no body. Don't you think that's strange? We waited for weeks. You sent men to search the base of that cliff, but we never found her." Oliver stayed silent, the tension in his jaw visible. "She could have been rescued," Clara said, almost pleading now. "She could be alive." Oliver stared at her, voice firm. "You're scaring yourself. She's been gone 6 years. She's dead. You're imagining things." "I'm not paranoid," Clara shouted again. "If I'm imagining things, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel like she's coming back for revenge?" Oliver looked down at the floor. He was trying to convince himself, but her words were beginning to get through. He wanted to believe she was gone, but even he couldn't deny the possibility that Natalie might have survived. "If she's alive," he murmured, barely audible, "then we're in deep trouble." Silence fell between them. Neither of them moved. Outside the house, a black vehicle drove slowly past their gate. Inside, Natalie sat calmly, observing the mansion she hadn't seen in years. Her expression wasn't happy. It was resolute. Since the fire, nothing had gone right for Oliver and Clara. One disaster after another. Debts piled up, but they kept it hidden from the public. Their pride demanded they maintain their high image. Inside the Kingsley boardroom, Oliver sat uneasily, surrounded by board members. Many wore expressions of anger, suspicion, or complete silence. "Sir," the CFO announced nervously, "we've lost $5 million from the offshore account in Singapore." "What?" Oliver yelled, jumping from his chair, gasping. "How? Wasn't that account protected with multi-level authentication?" "It was, but it looks like an inside job. Also, our transactions from the past week have all failed. Our product shipments from China, stuck in customs. And one more thing," the CFO added. Oliver stared, in disbelief. "Some of our major investors are pulling out. Just this morning, Mr. Hoso, our largest Japanese backer, withdrew his support. They've lost trust. Everyone's doubting us now." Oliver's face went pale, like the world was crumbling at his feet. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Clara was spiraling. She sat in front of a mirror, gasping, whispering to herself. "She's alive. Natalie's alive. She's doing all of this. She's bringing us down." Clara sobbed, hugging herself tightly, her mind unraveling. A few hours later, Oliver sat in his car, gripping his phone to his ear. "Sir," said the voice on the other end, "Mr. Long pulled out as well." Oliver closed his eyes. He exhaled, fighting the urge to scream. He leaned back, looking out the window for a moment of peace. But then, his body froze. A black car passed by. The back window rolled down. Inside, he saw the face of a woman, not just any woman. Natalie, his former wife, her hair tied back, dark sunglasses on, a cold smile on her lips. Natalie?" Oliver whispered, trembling. He burst out of the car and ran into the street. "Natalie! Natalie, wait!" he shouted. He searched the road, desperate to spot the car again. But it was gone. "Natalie!" he yelled once more, hands shaking, sweat dripping down his forehead. "No, no, it can't be. She's dead." He stumbled back, breathless, paralyzed. In his mind, one fear had solidified. The nightmare they buried years ago had returned. And from the look in her eyes, this wasn't just a return. It was vengeance. Natalie continued her silent but ruthless campaign. She didn't need weapons. She didn't need to shout. Her presence alone was enough to unravel Oliver and Clara's world. To them, she was a ghost, one they thought they'd buried, now haunting them with perfect timing and precision. Every move Natalie made was calculated, every blow planned. She wasn't only reclaiming what they stole, she wanted them to feel the kind of pain that had once shattered her. One afternoon, Natalie arrived at a luxury hotel in downtown Manhattan. She knew Clara was there for a business meeting, wearing a sleek black dress, her hair in a ponytail and dark shades covering her eyes. She walked through the lobby unnoticed, her route precise. And then, Clara exited the elevator. Their eyes met. Clara froze. In that split second, something cold ran down her spine, and before she could react, Natalie was gone. "Natalie!" Clara whispered, shaken. Her knees nearly gave out. She looked around frantically, but saw no sign of her. Panicked, she ran to the security room, demanding to see the CCTV footage. But there was nothing, no image of Natalie anywhere. She screamed, clutching at her head, pacing wildly. It was all part of Natalie's plan. She had connections. The footage had already been wiped. Everything was deliberate, down to the last step. Clara stumbled through the hotel, telling every person she passed that she had seen a ghost. People stared, whispered. Natalie, watching from a nearby hallway, allowed a small smile to form. This was exactly what she wanted, for them to unravel in their own fear, to be undone not by violence, but by their own guilt. Wherever Clara or Oliver went, a shadow seemed to follow, a familiar presence, a pair of eyes, always watching. At one event, Oliver spotted a woman in a black gown. She looked just like Natalie. He chased after her through the crowd, but when he reached where she had stood, she was gone. Then came a text, "Run while you still can, dig deep and hide." One night, as Natalie stood on the balcony of her penthouse, overlooking the city lights, her phone rang. It was Tegan. She answered. "How are you and Isla, Natalie?" he asked, concern in his voice. Natalie smiled slightly, swirling the wine in her glass. "I'm happy, Tegan," she said sweetly, but her tone held an icy edge. "They're finally falling apart. I can feel their fear. It's like a ghost is chasing them." There was silence on the other end before Tegan spoke again. "Natalie, why don't you just have them arrested? You have the evidence. You could end this legally. Why drag it out like this?" Natalie looked out over the city. She was quiet for a few seconds. "Not yet," she replied, stepping closer to the glass. "I don't want it to end that easily. I want them to feel everything I did. The shame, the fear, the complete destruction. I want them to beg for forgiveness, not because I forced them to, but because they have no other choice." Tegan didn't respond right away. He understood her pain. He knew she was consumed by it, but he also feared what it was doing to her. "Natalie," he said softly, "this might only hurt you more in the end. If you let anger drive you, you might end up with nothing but pain." But Natalie's answer was steady. "I won't stop until I see them ruined. Until they've suffered like I did. I won't be the only one who carries the scars of their games. And now, I'm the one holding all the cards." Tegan's voice was gentle. "I understand, and I know I can't change your mind. But if you need me, call me, anytime, no matter what." Natalie smiled faintly. "Thank you. But this time, I'm the one who wins." Natalie stood at the head of the long conference table, in a private room atop one of Manhattan's tallest skyscrapers. Surrounding her were men and women in suits, her legal team, financial consultants, private investigators. Projected on the wall behind her were documents, old copies of her parents' last will and testament, Kingsley Enterprises' original incorporation records, and proof of transfer fraud. At the center of it all was a single file, the one showing how Oliver and Clara had forged her medical power of attorney when she was declared legally incapacitated. This, Natalie said coldly, is how they took everything from me. The team listened in silence, absorbing every word. This is how they erased me, but now, she looked around, we're going to undo all of it. One of her attorneys, a woman named Dana, adjusted her glasses. We have enough to press charges: corporate fraud, attempted murder, estate theft. With your testimony, they'll be behind bars in no time. Natalie nodded, her voice calm. I don't want them arrested yet. Dana frowned. You sure? I want to look them in the eye first, Natalie said. I want them to see me, standing, alive, strong, before I take everything back. 1 week later, Oliver received a letter. It was hand-delivered by someone he didn't recognize. A man in a sleek black suit who offered no explanation, only the envelope. Oliver opened it. Inside was a single card with gold trim. Kingsley Grand Hall. Friday, 8 p.m. Come alone. On the back, a name. Natalie Kingsley. He dropped the card. His hands trembled. He clutched the edge of his desk for balance. Natalie. Friday arrived. Oliver showed up, wearing a black suit, his tie slightly crooked from stress. He stepped into the Grand Hall, once his and Natalie's private event venue, the very place where they used to hold charity balls and formal parties. He hadn't been here in years. It had been closed for renovation shortly after Natalie's death. Now it gleamed again. Polished floors, chandeliers lit, roses blooming in tall vases. And at the far end of the room, standing like a queen in command of her court, was Natalie. She stood tall, wearing a long emerald gown, her hair cascading over her shoulders, heels clicking against the floor as she stepped forward. Oliver stopped walking. It was her, no doubt. You're alive, he muttered, frozen in place. Natalie's eyes bore into him. She walked slowly toward him. Surprised? She said, voice sharp and composed. Oliver swallowed hard. Natalie, Save it, she snapped. I'm not here for apologies. I don't need to hear your lies. She raised her hand, silencing him again. You stole everything from me, she said. You tried to kill me. You made me believe I was worthless. You took my family, my future, my dignity. I lost everything because of you. Oliver couldn't speak. Natalie stepped closer, stopping just a foot away from him. But I survived. She smiled coldly. I survived the cliff, the waves, the betrayal. And now I'm here, to take back everything that's mine. She handed him a thick envelope. These are my demands. I want full return of the estate, my shares in Kingsley Enterprises, and a public apology, signed by both you and Clara. You'll also donate half of your remaining wealth to the Children's Rehabilitation Foundation my father founded. If you don't agree, she leaned in, I press charges, attempted murder, fraud, theft. The evidence is overwhelming. Your lawyers will take one look and advise you to plead guilty. Oliver stared at her, defeated. He knew she meant every word. And one more thing, Natalie added. I want you gone. After you've signed everything over, you'll leave the country. You'll never show your face here again. You can't, he started. I can, she said sharply. Or I drag you into court, ruin you completely, and watch as everything you've ever touched turns to ash. Oliver looked down. For the first time in years, he had no power. Natalie turned and began to walk away. At the door, she paused and looked over her shoulder. Next time you try to kill someone, Oliver, make sure they don't come back stronger than ever. And then she left, leaving him alone in the hall, clutching the envelope, the last of his empire slipping through his fingers. 3 days later, Clara sat inside her private office at what remained of her boutique agency. Her hands trembled as she gripped a crystal glass of scotch, her eyes bloodshot, her breathing shallow. She hadn't slept in days. Nightmares haunted her. Flames, waves, the sound of Natalie's voice echoing in her mind. You should have made sure I was dead. That voice had become a ghost that stalked every corner of her life. Suddenly, her assistant burst in, panic all over her face. Ma'am, turn on the news. Clara dropped her glass. It shattered across the floor. She reached for the remote and turned on the television mounted on the wall. The anchor's voice filled the room. In breaking news, a formal investigation has been opened against Clara Morales, socialite and co-owner of several fashion and lifestyle brands, for tax fraud, embezzlement, and falsified financial documents. This comes after whistleblowers from inside Morales Lifestyle Group provided authorities with extensive evidence of illegal financial manipulation. Insiders claim that over $20 million have been funneled through offshore accounts. Charges are expected to be filed within the week. Clara screamed. She grabbed the nearest chair and threw it against the TV screen, shattering it into pieces. Natalie, you witch! You did this to me! She screamed. Her assistant backed away in fear. Clara turned on her, eyes wild. Get out! Leave me alone! The assistant fled. Clara collapsed to the floor, sobbing, gasping, her entire body shaking. The empire she built from Natalie's stolen fortune, gone. And just like Natalie had once been, Clara was now alone. Later that evening, Clara went to the Kingsley mansion. She stormed through the front door, shouting for Oliver. He came down the staircase, quiet, expression blank. You! Clara screamed. You did nothing. You just sat there while she destroyed everything. Oliver looked tired, worn down to the bone. I told you, he said softly. I told you 6 years ago. We should have never touched her. Clara slapped him across the face. You coward! I gave up everything for you. I destroyed my life. For this. You destroyed your life, Oliver said, voice cold, when you chose to betray her. Clara backed away, trembling. You're just as guilty as I am. Oliver didn't answer. He walked past her, opened a drawer in the console table, and handed her a folder. What's this? She asked. The settlement, he said. I've signed everything over. You gave it all away? She shouted. Everything. If I didn't, he said, we'd both be in prison. Clara opened the folder and read the pages. Tears welled in her eyes. The estate, the remaining company shares, the cars, the properties, everything was gone. Everything was Natalie's again. Clara fell to the ground, sobbing, her body collapsing under the weight of loss. Upstairs, Oliver entered his office and closed the door. He stood quietly in front of the mirror for a long time. Then he pulled a small velvet box from the drawer. Inside was Natalie's wedding ring. He held it for a moment, the final reminder of the woman he tried to kill, of the empire he helped destroy. He set the box down and walked away. Morning sun streamed through the windows of a courtroom packed with media, lawyers, and spectators. At the front sat Natalie, dressed in a cream suit, her posture regal, calm, and powerful. She wasn't the broken woman who had once begged for her life. She was the rightful heir, the survivor, the avenger. On the opposite side of the courtroom, Oliver and Clara sat stiffly beside their lawyers. Their eyes never rose to meet Natalie's. They knew better. The judge reviewed the final documents and then looked out across the room. After thorough investigation, and in light of overwhelming evidence, this court restores full legal control of Kingsley Enterprises and the estate properties to Ms. Natalie Kingsley. The forged medical documents are hereby voided, and all previously transferred assets shall be returned immediately. The gavel struck. Clara gasped, clutching her chest. Oliver closed his eyes. But Natalie? She stood, calm, unshaken. As photographers outside swarmed the steps of the courthouse, Natalie emerged, surrounded by her legal team. Reporters shouted questions. Ms. Kingsley, How does it feel to finally win this battle? She paused and turned to the cameras. It's not about revenge, she said firmly. It's about justice. For my parents. For my sister. For every innocent person who's been wronged and told to stay silent. Then she walked away. That evening, Natalie returned to her penthouse. The sun was setting. Isla ran to her the moment she walked in. "Mommy!" she cried, wrapping her arms around her waist. Natalie picked her up, holding her close. "We're going home soon," she whispered into her daughter's hair. "Back to Rome, back to peace." Days later, she visited the final resting place of her parents and her sister, Allison, a quiet garden cemetery with blooming white roses. She placed fresh flowers down gently. "I've kept my promise," she whispered, kneeling. "I took it all back. They'll never hurt anyone again." The wind blew gently around her. As she stood, she looked toward the sky and smiled, not with triumph, but with peace. The next morning, Natalie and Isla boarded a private jet bound for Rome. Tegan was waiting on the tarmac. The moment she stepped off the plane, he opened his arms and smiled. "Welcome home," he said. Natalie walked toward him, her heels soft against the steps. She didn't rush. She didn't run. She walked, strong, steady. When she reached him, she handed Isla to him. Tegan lifted the little girl into the air, smiling with the pride of a father. Then Natalie looked up at him. "I'm ready," she said. Tegan reached for her hand. "No more running," he replied. She nodded and kissed him. No more fear, just a new beginning. The end. Thank you all for watching. This is Mr. Hope.